When you take a step back from a completed woodworking project, whether it's a Douglas fir tabletop, a chair, or a simple pine table like this laminated pine table here, there's always one final decision that will determine how that piece looks and performs for the next several years, and that is the finish. One finish that I find myself coming back to repeatedly, especially on indoor pieces, is polycrylic. Polycrylic has the reputation as the clean, clear, dependable finish. And honestly, that reputation is earned. Number one, it's water-based. That means cleanup is easy, the fumes that you're dealing with are low, and it's also far more forgiving in a small shop where ventilation might be limited. But the real reason I reach for polycrylic is its clarity, and it stays clear. Unlike oil-based polys like polyurethane that will amber over time, and I still like using polyurethane finishes, but unlike those, polycrylic goes on clear and it stays clear. And if you're working with light woods like maple, birch, or alder, Douglas fir, or even pine like this one, this table here, it won't shift the color. What you see in the raw wood is essentially what you'll see once the finish cures. And it also dries fast, really fast. And if you've ever tried to finish a project in between the noise and dust cycles of a small shop like mine that's pretty crowded, you know how valuable a quick dry time is. In an hour or two, you can be back to sanding or laying down the next coat. And I have found that extremely helpful. Again, I love using polyurethane. I think it's a great finish. But when I have to wait, 10 hours to 14 hours for a coat to cure before I can start another process without the danger of, dust covering and sticking to my finish, it's really critical that I have a quick drying finish. And so polycrylic is the answer. But with all those advantages, polycrylic does come with its own set of challenges. It's not a magic liquid. If you don't understand its personality, it can get streaky, cloudy, and especially bubbly in the surface, which will leave like these chicken pox kind of scar marks throughout your wood surface or the finished surface. And so you'll have to deal with that. You'll end up doing more sanding than you had planned. So I want to talk through those issues and how to work around them, and then we can use polycrylic and achieve a really nice finish on our woodworking projects. One of the first problems that I encountered when I started using polycrylic was air bubbles inside the material. So I would stir the material as gently as I could, and of course that's the number one reason you can have air bubbles, is you can inject them or actually stir them into your material. But I would stir as gently as I could, and whenever I applied the polycrylic on the surface of the wood, I would end up with bubbles. And I determined the easiest way to alleviate the bubbles is to use a high quality synthetic brush that will eliminate a lot of the bubbles. But also, if you overwork the polyurethane, so if you brush it on and then just keep going back over that section, you end up introducing air into the polycrylic, and it will create bubbles throughout the surface that you'll have to sand out. And so just maybe 3 passes with the polycrylic at best, and then move on. Otherwise, you'll have air bubbles throughout your surface. When you dip your brush back into the jar of polycrylic, be sure not to squeeze it out on the sides of the can, or you'll introduce air into the polycrylic. So we want to eliminate as much air as we can, and that can be done by stirring, you can introduce air by stirring too aggressively. You can introduce air by using a brush that is not a good quality synthetic brush. You can brush the material too much, especially if the material is being applied too thickly and you brush too much. Just the brush moving through the material can introduce air into it. It can entrain air and cause bubbles. And so that again creates more sanding work that you had not planned on. Another thing that I'll do after I get a section done is I'll go back and I'll just very lightly pull the brush through the many passes that I've done before I move on. And that typically helps pull out or break through some of the bubbles that may have shown up on the surface. The second challenge is that fast dry time can cause visible brush marks. It'll dry so quickly, especially if it's hot and you have low humidity, that it'll barely give you a working window to blend your passes. If you're brushing it on and you keep going back to touch up areas, you'll end up dragging a partially dried surface and leaving ridges that catch the light later. And the critical thing here, not only work quickly, but always keep working with a wet edge. In other words, on this tabletop here, for example, I've got a 10-foot long table. It would be wrong for me to probably brush on the polycrylic along the back edge 10 foot long and then go back to the other end of the table and start and brush a 10-foot long stretch, because you'll end up without a wet edge, because by the time you catch yourself over that 10-foot length, you're gonna already be setting up and curing out. And so I'm taking, for example, this table is about 3 feet wide. I'm brushing about 8 inches of material from back to front, and then I go the next 8 inches from back to front, and then the next 8 inches from back to front. And therefore I'm keeping a wet edge that I'm always dipping back into. Always use a high synthetic brush, as I mentioned before. This will help eliminate brush marks. And then once you get the polycrylic on, walk away from it. And what I mean by that is don't keep brushing back over it. I mentioned this with the air bubbles. This can also, if you don't add air bubbles, it can streak the polycrylic as it's curing. So keep good lighting also, and look at it at the surface at a low angle. That way you can catch any drips or anything like that as you move along and pull those out, because if you go back, you're gonna end up streaking your finish. The third thing is it actually raises the grain. So with it being a water-based finish, it will raise the grain, and your first coat may feel rough even if your prep sanding was flawless. And of course, with polyurethane, I've also experienced this as well, where you end up with a rough finish or a rough surface with your first finish. Just plan for that. Apply thin coats and then let it dry, and then sand it with a 220 grit sandpaper, just very gently. And then of course subsequent coats will lay down much smoother because the wood will have been sealed and it won't raise the grain. It can also look milky at first, and that can be something that could be alarming. This would be the fourth thing. And if it sets in deep pockets, it can dry milky. So if it's applied too heavily, just be sure to use thin coats. 3 thin coats is better than 1 thick coat. It's a lot easier to control that. And you also want to watch the corners and edges, because it can sag on the edges of your work and create this milky looking sag pattern. And of course you need to sand that out too. Another challenge is it's not great for high heat or outdoor exposure. So polycrylic shines on indoor furniture, cabinetry, tabletops, but it's not formulated for UV exposure or exterior moisture cycles. So use it properly. It's not something that you would use for outdoor furniture. For outdoor furniture, you would want to use spar urethane or some other kind of finish. But anyway, again, the reason I like it, it protects and it doesn't yellow, so it creates a good surface without yellowing. I love it because it dries quickly. That's a huge thing to me. It's easy to maintain. I love that it's easy to clean up. I want to keep reusing my brushes, and I do a really good job of trying to clean my brushes after I use them, and using polycrylic makes that so much easier. It's also easy to clean up, and it works well on woodworking pieces. Well, I hope you've enjoyed or gained something from this video about polycrylic. If you want to see the 3-part series on building this tabletop, be sure to check the links to the videos in the description below, and you can see that. There's also a video about the finish work that I did to prepare it for the polycrylic by power planing and sanding, and the link to that video is also in the description below. And then there's another video about using winding sticks to flatten surfaces that you might need to employ on a tabletop like this, a laminated tabletop, or for other things you need to do to flatten boards. So be sure to check all those videos out just by using the links in the description below. And I hope, again, you've enjoyed it. If it was meaningful to you, please give me a like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.